How can it be that people who love each other yet hurt and sadden each other? It seems to me that it is because of their neediness, their earthly imperfection. Only God can love without strife. His love comes from eternity. Neediness. At its deepest level, the need for love. Every human being needs love and thirsts for love. We experience this particularly in marriage. This love is also very strong in the early stages, but over time, there is danger that it will diminish, if not disappear altogether. What can we do to ensure that love does not diminish over time, but continues to grow? We've already heard some important things today, and now we want to address one more point that may sound somewhat paradoxical. Love also grows when we learn to deal with conflicts constructively. The ability to resolve conflicts is the ability to love. Conflicts are part of any relationship. Unfortunately, we often do not deal with them well. We tend to avoid conflicts by hiding, withdrawing, or keeping things secret. The reason is often that it's too exhausting for us, or we are afraid of escalation, or we are hurt, disappointed in our partner or in the relationship as a whole, perhaps even resigned. Perhaps because there's also no solution in sight. Over time, this creates a kind of mess in the relationship, which continues to grow with every new unresolved conflict, a dung heap.
And you can see, if we have such a dung heap, in the beginning it's a smaller heap, and then another conflict comes on top, and then it begins to grow and grow and grow. And at some point, the whole God, love, and marriage triangle, you almost cannot see each other again, and the relationship to God is restricted. This is a situation in which couples come to us and they say, we can no longer talk to each other without immediately getting into an argument. And that happens because old unsolved conflicts are triggered, and you can see that you're poking around, and then all the old problems, they come up again and they resurface. And it happens if you grow one of those grasses out, and then there's a foul odor rising. And then it means, so when they're arguing, the couples, then the problem, what I have with my in-laws 10 years ago, will come up again. And suddenly we're like with really, really long ago issues. And if you have that foul odor rising, then it can happen that this whole manure heap can explode. And that's the explosion where couples say, we need to separate. It's not worthy. Let's get divorced. And there's a resignation.
Explosions through methane gas coming from the manure. Yeah, it's actually quite realistic.
But there's also another variant to avoid this very thing, that it's not smelly or an explosion, that the partners stop talking to each other. They just stop doing anything and they do everything by themselves. And when they come to us, They say we've somehow grown apart. Everybody is doing their own part. And we experienced this really gravely in a setting, in a 4-people setting. He told his wife for the very first time that he bought a horse because they didn't talk with each other at all. Now, some may think that it would be best if there were no conflicts at all. This is what conflict-averse people like to say. We heard it this morning in Christian houses. It's common. They have a supposed peacefulness, and they are calling it love. But conflicts are normal. They are simply part of life. And they're there because we're different. They're part of us. The question is how we can deal with conflicts on a constructive level so that we, so me and also we as a couple and my husband, that we can grow from them rather than the manure heap. And now we have something important. How can the dung heap be turned into good fertilizer? You have been on a farm and you know that dung is a good fertilizer. And if we use a conflict and have coped with it very well, then it will be a very stabilizing foundation. It will be a solid foundation. And over the years, it will grow. That foundation will grow, and at the end, we will have a house on the rocks Jesus was talking about.
So we'd like to tell you about an example where we had a couple where a pile of manure like that had grown up. Anton and Antonia had, as so often, gotten into a heated argument about how they should handle their money. And Anton had bought himself a new tool, a rather expensive one, which Antonia was totally appalled about, spending so much money on something she considered completely unnecessary. They got into a fierce argument about it and then came to us with this situation. She is thrifty and wants to save money. He is happy that they have enough money and likes to spend it on things he considers useful. How can they get out of this conflict-laden stalemate? And here is, we can use the Dutch bridge model.
It's a true Swiss work. It's a Dutch bridge.
And some people might know these bridges from Holland. We already heard about the Rendsburger High Bridge that the ships can go through underneath. But the Dutch bridges that are with the canals and everything, they're very low. So in order for the boats to go through, the bridges have to open up. And once they've gone through, we can put the bridge back down. And then the traffic across the streets, on the roads, the bridges can keep continuing. This model shows us how we can deal with the stalemate situation in a constructive way. Antonia was adamant. We have to be responsible with our money and not spend more than is necessary. And Anton's view was, we've been given so much money, I see this as a gift, and I want to be able to use it to buy things that are good and useful for me or our family. In this stalemate, the two were unable to communicate peacefully on the relationship level, on the bridge. But now each could raise their part of the bridge, which ended the dispute and turned the bridge into a God-marriage triangle. Now each could ask God the question, how do you see our conflict? And what do you say to my position, which is actually quite right? They turned to the one who conceived marriage and created it. And just as an engineer knows best how his product works, the way he invented it, the same goes for God. We had a house once in the 80s, and an awesome engineer put in a hot water pump. But we had the feeling it wasn't very mature yet, the technology. And whenever it had an issue, we had to call this engineer and to fix the heating system, the heat pump. And that's how it is with disturbances in our marriage. We can ask God, we can call God to help us with these problems.
And I have to add something to this. The heat pump stopped working. Frauke, maybe you remember, you were in primary school. Then we called our engineer, and he was on vacation. And that's never happening with God. So they both had the bridge sides pulled up, and it didn't take long to receive an impulse from listening to God. Antonia received a surprising answer. She didn't feel brave enough to be generous. And when we talked about it to her, it was clear that out of her childhood pattern, she was allowed to get out the fear of not having enough money. And the first step was that she was allowed to enjoy God's generosity for herself for the very first time. Anton also had an impulse from God and was also not less surprised when during this time he was reminded of how many tools and devices he secretly bought behind his wife's back. And now he realized that he became guilty towards his wife. And while talking, they realized that the conflict avoidance behind his behavior was in order to avoid the endless discussions and justifications, that he just wanted to avoid them. They could now lower their bridges again and engage constructively in the relationship area. And they had a constructive talk, how they both felt about it.
So we can connect to what Toby and Frauke said this morning about the blockades that are in sometimes in our pipe
Last
system.
evening.
It was yesterday evening, not this morning. Thank you. But the two of them noticed how there were blockades in their self-blockades in their own relationship. Antonia was scared that there wasn't enough money, and Anton wanted to avoid conflict by being secretive. And once God revealed these things, these blockades could be removed. Antonia was able to let go of her fear and was able to accept being more generous in life. And Anton got rid of his guilt and decided to not carry secrets anymore, and to go and discuss with her before making decisions alone. And such positive experiences greatly strengthen our love for one another. They're basically like blades of grass, like growth nodes. The way that God helped them with this experience was a growth node, experiencing God. You all have seen this before when you see little blades of grass, and these blades, stabilize because they're not easily bent by the wind. And in our marriages, those are the conflicts that we've actually mastered in a good way, in a positive way. There may be painful or other experiences or crises that we have to go through, and they also cause growth pains. But let your love grow can also mean pain. The decisive factor is not to be discouraged, but to keep the next step in growth in front of your eyes. Maybe you'd like to talk to each other about that. Where are such growth nodes in our relationship now? Or where is such a node just beginning to start? Take 1 or 2 minutes and speak to each other about such nodes of growth in the past or maybe even in the present. And a second question I will give you, back to the subject at hand. In which typical area do we want to apply the Dutch bridge in the future? But first, speak about the growth nodes.
We continue. In your daytime, you can actually continue talking about it. It's really wonderful how you all were talking to each other. It's really wonderful for us. There are also conflict situations in which joint processing not possible. It's just not possible, or sometimes even not necessary. Either one person, one partner is not willing to resolve the conflict. That's possible. Or the other one doesn't even know and is not aware that I have a problem with the other person. He doesn't know or she doesn't know anything about it. The Dutch bridge illustrates that such a conflict can also be resolved by themselves. One has his bridge part at the bottom, but I pulled mine up. I can raise my half of the bridge. I can resolve my problem with my partner or for myself with God, and then when I talked to God about it, then I can lower my part with my new attitude and God's perspective on it. I want to give you an example about myself. It's very personal. We were invited so often to a party. I love parties. Hartmut less so. And as so often, I totally criticized his behavior in my mind. He's not the party animal I wanted him to be. I also love his quiet part, but at the party, I would have liked to experience him differently. And most of the time, I would rattle and count the things I disliked about the evening. You can imagine how difficult these rides home were. But I've learned my part, my share, so I didn't say anything at all. No, I'm not going to criticize him. Not. I'm going to talk with God first. It was really late. We went to bed immediately, and Hartmut fell asleep immediately. And I really started complaining to God about how he had behaved again and how I didn't like that at all. And when I finished with my complaint, totally unexpected, I heard the sentence, and completely by surprise, you know, I really enjoyed Hartmut tonight. And I was really perplexed. And it didn't fit my emotional state. And then then concrete situations into my head. He listened so attentively when talking to so-and-so. He was really close with that so-and-so. And in conversation with these two people, or three people, he talked so joyful about his faith and his church. And in fact, he was completely himself the whole evening. My criticism collapsed immediately. And all I could say was, yes, you're right. If I see him with your eyes, then I see I have a wonderful husband. He didn't even know that I was thinking about him like that. And I was really relieved, and I was really comfy on my side of the bed. But then I heard the loving, reassuring voice inside me that said, but Christiane, I had something to complain about your behavior. I can tell that it's God's voice because he's so loving and forgiving, even if he tells me negative or complicated things. And I can really differentiate really well. It's not an accusing, it's not hard, nothing torturing. He's talking so loving and so caring. And with the next sentences, he said it in this quiet voice. In your conversation with so-and-so, I really had it immediately in front of my eyes because it was only a couple of hours ago. You were only seeking your own glory. And in conversation with these people, you could have said something about me. And anyways, you spend the whole evening judging people and sometimes even putting them down. And, you know, you just misjudged the people. I started crying. And I said, Jesus, you're right. I can only ask for your forgiveness. Forgive me. It was just as you said. And he said, I'm happily forgiving you, Christiane. And when I felt the thankfulness, I had a voice again, and he said, and I would really appreciate it if you would apologize to Hartmut tomorrow. He was sleeping. I couldn't have said anything right there and then. The next day was a Sunday. I remember it just like yesterday. And I spent the whole day wondering whether it was really important. But between God and me, everything is okay. And my attitude towards Hartmut is totally okay as well. But I always had this sentence in my head. I would really appreciate it. And then I said, Hartmut, I wanted to apologize for yesterday, for last night. And he said, apologize for what? Nothing happened. And then I told him the whole story, what God had said to me about him. And that was really good for you. And then I told him what God said to me. And that I had a good talk with God and that he forgave me everything. I put my bridge back down again. And that was such a strong bond and between us for our relationship. And I'm so thankful that I followed this impulse. I followed I would appreciate, it would be nice if, and that I followed it. He didn't say it as a must. If I wouldn't have done it, we would have missed a really strong bond and missed that opportunity for our relationship. And that own experience was so great for me. If I have an inner impulse to do something good for Hartmut or the relationship, to actually do it. Because God, He is the creator of marriage. He only means well with us. And He only gives us impulses who are good for us. He's the most important partner in our relationship.
So as Christiane was talking to God during the night, in another situation, I had a similar exchange with God. We had a phase where the two of us didn't really work well together, and I didn't find her to be very lovable. And I saw in a dream the way her face was shining and glowing in a very translucent way, like it was a heavenly appearance. And she smiled at me with her whole heart, with no inhibitions and with no accusations. And so a poem was created I'd like to read. My wife in your light. I long to see my wife in your light. Reveal to me your vision so bright. My shadow falls a veil on her face. I strain through the haze but see no trace. Old stories rise, they cloud and they bind. I turn to the past and leave the future behind. Let me behold her as you always do, bathed in the glow of your radiance true. Lift every darkness that dims my sight. Show me her beauty that sparkles in your light.
Thank you, Daddy.
So now you know where my depth comes from. Thank you, parents-in-law, for what you shared with us. It's a great joy to walk in the inheritance that you've passed on and everything that you've invested in us. It's really something beautiful that you've done that for us as a couple. So every input that we pass on to you guys, we always share it with them first, and they give us their feedback before we put it in public. Thank you so much for all of your support and help. We'd like to finish this AmoreXperience in a very special way with a statement that we've made once as a couple.
That we can every day, what we learned also from them, we can make the decision anew. I decided myself for you, and we stick with it. And we want to renew our heartfelt bond and make that decision like the marriage bond. We had a very interesting experience. We married 26 years ago, and back then we had classical golden rings, and we were wearing them, and you were always frustrated. It's too tiny, I can't see it properly. And then Biggers had huge wedding rings, and then we thought, actually, it would be nice if we had more. And then we thought, can we do that? Can we just get new rings? And then, is that smart? You don't have to do it. But then it was so interesting. We were in ICF Zurich, and we had this question, and suddenly a good friend, Stefan Hensch, came along, pastor from ICF Berlin, one morning, and he said, this morning I read about you in the Bible. And I thought, okay, what did you read? And then he read a Bible verse. It's in Isaiah 41:18. It's about desert and difficult times. It says, for I will I will change the rivers. After Teichen, you can make a point. So in German, the word is like the lakes, so the joke doesn't work in English. And so we're in the Bible. So we decide, okay, we do that. We buy new wedding rings, and we engrave that part of the sentence into our marriage sentence, because it's part of our life, but also for the people around us.
So the marriage vow is, you know, it's not just you just say it once, you commit it once, you commit every day. For us, it's 26 years ago, but every day I commit myself again, new to my wife. And so today we want to take a moment. We want to give you the option to, opportunity to renew your commitment to each other. And so we brought you a QR code, and you'll find it in the app. It's on the first page. There's actually a random principle behind it, that you will get a randomly picked Bible verse. And then you can go look and see if God is speaking to you through that verse, to you as a couple. Can we have the QR code? So, there we go. So, but you can do it later as well. So whether you have the Bible verse or not, we want to give you the opportunity to take time together. We're going to do it this way. We're going to stand up. We're going to give each other the ring, just like back in the day when you got married, and renew your vow, renew your commitment to each other. The ring is an outer symbol for an inner decision. So we'd like to invite you to stand up, and you stand across from your partner and pull off the ring, and then...
That's like a decision. I give you my heart anew, and I trust you. You can do this at home. We're in all the locations.
Let's look at each other in the eyes. The eyes are such an important location where we can look into each other's souls. And I'm going to give us men the first chance to renew this commitment, this vow, because love is a decision that creates feelings, and it's a decision where God speaks to us repeatedly. I'm going to give you a prayer that you can repeat, just like at the wedding altar, and then you can speak this to your partner. Now I take you once again from God's hand. I will love you and honor you, share joy and sorrow with you, and faithfully uphold the covenant of marriage with you until death do us part. And I just make that decision with God's help. So let's put this ring on our wife's finger as a symbol of that commitment.
And the same way, dear ladies, you can look at your husbands and just try to show the love you have for your husband, the way you're looking at him. Thankfulness. And you can also follow my lead. I hereby accept you anew from God's hand. I will love and honor you, share joy and sorrow with you, and faithfully uphold the covenant of marriage with you until death do us part. And you can give your husband the ring as the sign of your love and commitment. And all this, I do this with God's help.
So I'd like to invite you to hold your hands, the hands that have the rings. And we want to renew our decision to do what God wants. It says, what God has put together, the men shall not separate, the humans shall not separate. It says, and so we decide to let God put us together, and we make that decision.